Of course, there are two things one needs to look at, whether it's well administered or well managed. And if by administration one simply says, are all the pieces being counted, then one isn't even sure of that. If one looks at the fact that at its very simplest form, a regular old paper-based textbook is technology, and we know how badly that is being managed in many of the South African situations. But if we then look at traditional computer technology, and I specifically use the word traditional computer technology because computers in the classrooms have been with us for more than 25 years already, so there's nothing new about technology in education. And yes, it has been very badly managed because people are not asking the right questions first. The first question we need to ask is, what is it that we want learners to learn? And then we need to ask, why do they need to learn that? And then we need to ask, what tasks must they do so that we know that they've learned that? And then finally we need to say, what technology do they need to perform those tasks? So let's use a very simple example from English language, for instance, and say, to write a business letter. Why must learners know that? Because that is what they are going to do for the rest of their lives. Now we need to say, what technology do they need to write a business letter? And the first thing is we know what technology they do not need. They do not need pens and papers because we no longer write business letters by hand. Neither do we write business letters on computer. We mail merge business letters on computer. So what learners need to understand is the form of a business letter, the way in which you keep the content and the format apart. You will know that the letters you get from the bank says, "Dear Mr. So-and-so, you'll be happy to know that your bank account currently stands on," and there's a little number, and that number changes because the computer takes that out of the database. So in short, again, it's how the technology is being used that isn't being well managed. Yeah, we have places where it is used and it is well managed. We have the legacy of the Cronje labs in the Western Cape. We have some interesting remnants of things that were done in the Free State province. And of course we have a number of very well run Model C schools that are running their computer infrastructure really, really well. But that's not, to my mind, the essence of the question. What we also have to say is, what is technology? Because what we call technology and what kids call technology are different things. And I'm worried about all that technology that is currently not being harnessed in our education system. In other words, every child has in his or her pocket a cellular phone that has more information, the capacity of storing much more information. Did you know that you can, on a very simple, the first generation cellular phones, those that we traditionally called bricks, on that phone you can store a SIM card. You could take out the regular SIM card and put in an alternative SIM card that can carry a 97-page textbook. And so a learner could read a textbook off a SIM card. It's those sort of technologies are the easiest things in the world. The learners have them in their pockets and we're not harnessing those. Then we go one step up with a feature phone and mix it. Textbooks, the whole of Wikipedia is freely available to certain networks through Mixit. Again, we're not using that. We're still expecting learners to sit in a class and be taught by the way the teachers used to be taught in the past.
Do you think that those who are meant to manage the whole process of using those technology for the purpose of education, are they doing their job properly?
They are doing properly what they think is their job. And they think their job is to manage the technology. In other words, they think that their job is to ensure that there are computers in rooms. They think that their job is to ensure that there is a network that's up and running. And they think that their job is to make sure that there is a stable connection to the internet. Actually, the truth is that their job is to ensure that learners learn.
It is more complex than that.
You know, I have 3 children and I sent them to reasonably good schools, and never once have I sat back and said, so what's the return on investment that I got on these children? I put so much into their education, how much am I going to get out of it again? I'm not planning that they will ever repay me for their education, for the time and effort, not just money, time, effort that I put into those children's education. I'm not expecting a cost benefit of it. Good education is what children deserve by virtue of being your children. And the same way as my children have a right to a good education because they are my children, the same way South Africa's children have the right to a good education because they are South Africa's children. And the problem again is that I don't believe that they've had too little money spent on them. I think that money just hasn't been wisely spent. That money should be spent on teacher education. That money should be spent on training teachers so that those teachers are able to assist those learners to learn. You know, I'm hearing now again that people are saying, well, let's put tablets into classrooms. Let's put the whole syllabus onto tablets and then distribute these tablets and it'll save the problem with the textbook. Now, the problem is in getting a physical object to that school. And whether that physical object is a book or a tablet, we can't get it to the school. So tablets are not going to solve the problem. It's just going to be a little bit more technology rich. But there are any other numbers of technology by which we can get those things into the schools. We can put up websites that children can access through Mixit. We can put up we can get information to them through WhatsApp. There are any number of Wi-Fi into libraries. There are any number of alternative ways in which we can get information to children using technology that they already have in their pockets. And that thinking isn't happening. I am suggesting that we should reconceptualize what it is to teach. Now, what it means to teach is to create an environment in which children want to learn. And that means finding out what it is that they need to know and what it is that will make them want to know that. And then only does technology play a role in this process. We're doing it the wrong way around to say, let's audit and see how many computers are in schools and what do those computers contribute and so on. It makes no difference. I have seen, you know, there's this thing about clickers. Clickers are little devices that you keep in a classroom and then children can select an answer 1, 2, 3, ABC or whatever, and then we can see, the teacher can see on a screen how many children selected each option. Now, when I was at school, we also had clickers. They were called our fingers. We used to click them like that, and the teachers knew exactly how many of us had our hands up or how many of them didn't. We didn't have to log into a website and press the clickers. This is madness. There's another thing now that we have. It's called flipped classrooms, and the idea of the flipped classroom is that children will get some work to read or watch a YouTube video or something before they come to class, and then in class they will discuss what they had done before class. Now, we also had flipped classrooms when I was at school. It was called preparation. So nothing's changed. It's just that we are throwing technology at a problem which isn't a problem to start off with. In the world that I see arriving very quickly, and it's stolen up on us much more quickly than we thought it would, we've got to a stage where the answers are already given to us before we've asked the question. When last did you type a string into Google and actually have to finish that search? As you type in the search, Google already completes the search for you. I always ask teachers, maths teachers specifically, do you teach children to do compound interest, to calculate compound interest? And then they proudly tell me that they do. And then I say, why do you do that? And they said, so that children will know how much more money they might have to pay off on a bond if they want to pay it off more quickly, or things like that. And I say, well, actually, I can get the same information by going to any bank's website and just typing in how much I want to invest for how long, at what interest rate, and the bank will calculate that compound interest for me. I also ask them whether they teach conversion from inches to centimeters and things like that, and then some of them tell me yes, and they can even give me the formulas that are used to do those calculations. I'm saying, why on earth would you want to do that? Because you type into Google how much is so many inches in centimeters, and it tells you immediately. So we should not be asking kids to do those things. We should be looking at fundamental principles and what it is to be a good learner. What it is to understand how the world works, what it is to know what sort of questions you need to ask and when to ask them and of which platform to ask them, and how to evaluate whether those things are true. Strategic citizenship is what children should be trained and should be educated into being. And that you can't do without a really technology-rich environment around them. I think it is an entire redesign of the education system to take note of the concept of what I want to call rhizonomic learning. You know, what happens at the moment is that in the past, people learnt from other people. What's happening currently is machines learn from people and people learn from machines. So my cell phone that is in my pocket, which is hardly a phone anymore, it is a personal assistant that can also sometimes phone if I should want it to. That has a GPS device. As I travel, so it learns my patterns and it gives me alternatives based on what it's seen me do previously. When I get to work, it already tells me how long it takes to get home. When I get off at an airport in Johannesburg, it already tells me how long it takes to get to my mother's house in Pretoria, which is where I'm most likely to go. And so the machine is ahead of me already because the machine is learning from me. But I'm also learning from the machine because the machine will give me different routes and different options depending on the time of day, on the climate, on the prevailing traffic conditions, and so on. And so there is this synergy between people and machines, and that's what needs to happen in the education system. We need to understand what it is, what the key skills are that people need to learn, and those things need to be attended to.
Do you think that there is a place for technology not just to help you work it out, but also to help your students to improve their learning too?
Laban, I've been in the business of computers and education for about 20 years, and in those 20 years I have reinvented my practice just about every year. The difference is that now I'm not reinventing my practice every year, I'm reinventing my practice on a daily basis because it changes that quickly. Just in this year alone, I started a website for doctoral students showing them what to do, providing them with links, providing them with interesting hints and information about where they should go when they need their problems solved in terms of their doctoral research. In the meantime, I'm also suggesting to them various applications that they can put on their cell phones that will help them collect data more easily. And I'm looking at various other techniques by which one can improve the speed at which doctoral studies are completed and the quality at which doctoral studies is being done. And I've reached the stage now where if I am in a classroom and every student in my classroom does not have an internet-enabled device that is on the internet ready and working, I actually can no longer teach. MOOCs are nothing other than textbooks. They are just interactive textbooks. They give you large amounts of comment, and then they ask you to make, at least they give you large amounts of content, and then they ask you to make comment on that. Many good MOOCs, such as the one on open and distance learning done about a year ago, many of those good MOOCs actually stay open once they've been finished, to allow people to continue with them. It's sort of like a theme park. I would guess that a MOOC to me is to the education community what the big rock concert on Wembley Stadium or so is to the music community. So it's become the spectacle of teaching and learning, and it has the same value as the spectacle of teaching and learning. It creates a stir, creates enthusiasm, and it makes people buy the CD.